In this video, we're going to look at how the organs are involved in metabolism. So here are the pathways, the broad picture of the pathways we have talked about so far this semester, breaking down protein, glycogen, and triacylglycerols, and also rebuilding them. And so if we look at the broad picture of these pathways, we can see that two main molecules are at the center of this. Pyruvate and acetyl-CoA. They're at the crossroads of these major pathways. Now for all of the pathways shown here, only a few tissues, like the liver, will do all those reactions. Other tissues, other organs will only do some of these reactions. However, roughly 60% of all the metabolic enzymes that we talked about that we know of are expressed at some level in the tissues in the body. So what we're going to look at now is how all these different organs interact with each other for our picture on metabolism. So brain takes 20% of all the oxygen that you use in your body. And mainly that energy is used to power sodium, potassium, ATPase pumps. This allows to have a electrochemical membrane potential that allows nerve impulse transmission. The brain generally needs glucose, but if you are in extended fast, you can switch to ketone bodies. The brain itself doesn't really store energy, so it stores little glycogen, so it constantly needs glucose from the blood. And if you drop under half of your normal glucose levels, which is roughly 5 millimolar, your brain will be dysfunctional, and even lower levels can eventually lead to coma, permanent damage, or death. Now we're going to move over to the muscles, and just like the brain, muscles mainly use glucose, but it can also use fatty acids and ketone bodies. The main way that muscles are going to get its glucose is through storage of glycogen. 1 to 2% of muscle weight is due to glycogen, remember, which is just glucose. And we did talk about this before, but it's so we can do glycolysis and get energy way faster anaerobically than we could through the citric acid cycle. Now, muscles don't export glucose, and they cannot do gluconeogenesis. They can't make their own glucose. The majority of the ATP that you make in muscles is for contraction, which makes sense. And the brain uses 20%, while your muscles, your skeletal muscles, use 30% of your oxygen while at rest. But if you are actively using your muscles, this can jump a lot. It can jump roughly 25-fold. Now, to regenerate the ATP inside your muscles, you will use phosphocreatine. We talked about phosphocreatine way back at the beginning of this class when we were looking at phosphates, different phosphate compounds and their energy levels. Phosphocreatine is higher energy level than ATP, so it can be used to make ATP. But your muscles only have roughly a 4-second supply of phosphocreatine, so you can use it for burst energy. Then you can no longer remake ATP this way. So after you use your phosphocreatine, you're going to start breaking down G6P to lactate during exercise. And the idea is that your muscles will get tired, and evolutionary speaking, it's thought that your muscles tire out, so you don't use all your ATP. Because if you use all your ATP, your muscles can't function as cells, and then they will die. You don't want your muscles to die just because you're working out hard. Now, muscles use a lot of energy. They need a lot of ATP, so they have a lot of mitochondria. The heart is actually 40% mitochondria, so lots of energy being used. For the heart, you will actually use fatty acids. But if your heart's working a lot, then you can switch over to glucose to get your ATP in your heart. Now let's talk about your fat cells or your adipose tissue. This will store and release fatty acids for your body. This can also secrete hormones that will help regulate your metabolism. And 15 kilograms of fat is roughly enough energy for living 3 months. So just a little bit of fat storage goes a long way. Most of the fatty acid found in adipose tissue is from those lipoproteins we talked about, the chylomicrons, HLDLs, etc. They will just reabsorb the fat in your bloodstream and store it. Now, if you are low energy, what these adipocytes will do is that they will cut the triacylglycerols to fatty acid and just glycerol via our lipases that we talked about. If you have a lot of G3P around, many of these fatty acids will just be reesterified to triacylglycerols and restored. However, if you don't have G3P, then these fatty acids will be released in the bloodstream to be used for energy. And so the rate at which fatty acid is mobilized in your body is really dependent on how much glucose you have, because that will directly relate to the amount of G3P you have. Let's look at the liver, and the liver is kind of the main hub for all metabolism. They make sure that all our levels of fuel are correct for your brain, your muscles, and your other tissues. This is really directing everything, so it's kind of important that you take care of your liver. Now, all nutrients that are absorbed by the intestines, except for your fatty acids, will go to the liver. And we looked at how fatty acids, what happens there in our fatty acid chapter. One function is to make sure that there's enough glucose in your blood for your brain, because remember, if we drop too low glucose, your brain will die. So the liver makes sure we always have that supply of glucose available. And so based on different hormones or the blood glucose level itself, the liver will either take up excess glucose or release glucose so we can continue to run smoothly. And that is it for this video. I will see you in the next one.